So I'm actually at O'Reilly's for what is surprisingly not my truck for once, but it is the same motor. However, I'm doing spark plugs on a 2007 Dodge Charger Daytona trim package. So it's the same motor and everything, but it's just in a different car. I've done these spark plugs before a few times. It's not really a big job, but it is something that is a little bit odd, because in some of the early model Chargers or Challengers that came with the 5.7 Hemi, they've been like, what the mechanics have said they had to do to get the rear spark plugs out is unbolt the motor mounts and lift up and pull back the rear of the motor. So like they'd have to unbolt the motor mounts and lift it up and pull it backwards towards them to get the rear spark plugs out, because the brake booster kind of sits on top of everything. But we're going to figure that out today, if it's the same in the Chargers as it is in the trucks. This truck is very hard to do the rear spark plugs, and I found that out the hard way. I got the new spark plugs now. I've never put these in my truck. It's the same motor and everything. I never have, but I've heard only good things about it. I've only heard good things about this brand, and I heard they come pre-gapped, so that'll be interesting to see. I'm still going to check the gap on them just to make sure it is correct. But yeah, so I'm going to get to installing these now. Okay, so here's the car. Obviously, it's got salt on it right now because it is a Midwest car. We live in the Rust Belt. And if we take a look under the hood, you can see this does look like a fairly relatively easy job to do compared to doing it to my truck, which I'll put a picture of the underside of the hood in, and I'll put it over this. But it does look like a fairly relatively job to do, or a fairly relatively easy job to do. This air box might have to come out. It may just be the lid that has to come out to get to this bolt down here on the coil pack, but even then, that's not too bad. This dipstick might be a little bit in the way, but that's still not even too bad, because this just props up right once you take off these two bolts. So yeah, I'm gonna get started on taking off the coil packs, and then obviously taking out spark plugs. But this should be relatively easy, maybe done in like a half hour or 45 minutes, only based off the fact there's 16 spark plugs. Okay, so now that we've got light, I'm gonna kind of take a look in here. I am gonna pull this air box because it'll be really hard to get to that. But aside from that, I don't even think I have to pull off the hose, because on that truck I had to pull the hose out to actually do my spark plugs, and it really irritated me. So all this is a flathead or a what looks to be a socket. I can probably fit a socket on there. I'm just gonna take a flathead, loosen it up, pull it off, take off this bleeder or whatever this is. I don't even know. I don't really look at intake manifold. Okay, so I'm gonna pull this off, pull that off, and then I think, yeah, and then I'm gonna take off the actual air filter itself, so then we can access to that first coil pack bolt. So now that we have our air box pulled out, we can access this bolt, which I think that might be smaller than a 10. That's definitely smaller than a 10. Oh no, that's a 10 exactly. Okay, so these are all going to be 10mm bolts, and then I believe the spark plugs, actually I don't know what size those are, but I'll figure it out. And then yeah, so we're going to take off all these coil packs first, or we're going to loosen all of them, and then we'll start pulling out spark plugs. So now that we have our coil pack off, I'm gonna grab like a handful of sockets. Well, I'm gonna grab one of the spark plugs out of the new boxes, and then I'm gonna see which socket size fits that, and then I'm gonna put it on an extension, a longer extension, not something short, and I'm gonna drop it down in there on the spark plug. You know, make sure I'm going to the left, and then I'm gonna pull these spark plugs out, and then we can put in our new ones, and then move on to the next one. And then, so already this is going pretty well. It should only take about 30 minutes to do all of the spark plugs, I'm hoping. But yeah, so that should be pretty easy. So according to what Google said, and what is considered OEM, or is what is often like referred to in repair manual or service manuals, is the plugs will come in, is the plug should be gapped to 0.040 or 0.044 thousandths of an inch, or it's going to be 1mm to 1.1mm. So here we have an NGK, what the fuck, Yeah, whatever that is. So we have an NGK, and we're going to test the gap on it, because as much as I like to say I trust these, I don't really trust them. So here we have a generic AutoZone gap tester. So where is, of course there's a fucking sticker on the back. So it says these are typically gapped to 0.44, which is actually like right on dime. So these are gapped correctly. And then now I'm gonna start pulling the old spark plugs out and putting in the new ones. So since none of my spark plug sockets actually fit onto the new spark plugs, we're going to be pulling them out with a 16, and I completely forgot to grab an extension. So yeah, we're going to be pulling them out with a 16, and that should work because that sounds familiar to the last time I did spark plugs on a 5.7 liter Hemi. So now that we have the old plug out, we can compare it to one of the new ones. And yeah, safe to say these need to be changed. I don't think it would have done any harm to not ride. I don't think it would have done any harm to ride them out a few more miles. I would have changed them out at this point if this was my vehicle, which he's making a good call by wanting them changed now. So now we're gonna get the other spark plug out because it is dual spark. So each coil pack runs 2 plugs, and it's fucking 16 spark plugs, like I said earlier. I mean, I'm using 3 boxes for my phone stand since I don't have a tripod or a camera. The thing I don't like about these spark plugs, however, and I'm not sure if it's the same on a lot of other vehicles, is once you get the coil pack off, you have to loosen the spark plugs and then drop the coil pack back in, because A, I don't have a magnet, and B, I don't have pliers I think that could reach down in there and grab something like that small head on the spark plug. But I did see where I'm gonna run into a problem, and it's gonna be right here when I go to pull these spark plugs out, which, I mean, I might just be overthinking it, but that looks like the most complicated one so far. So now we've got both old spark plugs out, it's time to start putting in the new ones. Some people like to vacuum out where the spark plugs go. I look down there with a flashlight, it looks pretty clean. Like, it looks actually very clean down there. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw these 2 in, and then I'm gonna come back and mark each coil pack with a Sharpie, like on the top, just a small line to mark that I've done it, so I don't accidentally, you know, go back, do one, and pull them out and see that, oh, there's brand new spark plugs in there. And so now a thing with spark plugs is you want to always get them hand tight before actually taking a wrench to them. So that's what I'm doing with this. That's the reason I don't have a ratchet on there, is because with a ratchet you can always feel like, oh, it's not tight enough. But when you're hand tightening them, like, see, now I'm getting resistance, so I know those are hand tight, and then I can take a ratchet to them and then torque them down to spec. This damn intake hose that gets in the way. But after that, that shouldn't be a problem, because then it's really just, you know, getting the coil packs back in, marking them, getting them seated, bolting them down, and then moving on to the next one. And then after that, it shouldn't really take that long. But yeah, I'm gonna go around and unbolt every coil pack once I'm done with this cylinder, and then we'll start just pulling spark plugs and dropping in new ones. So I'm almost halfway through right now, and turns out this is actually the fucking hardest cylinder to do for the spark plugs, because you've got this line, and this line all right here. So in order for me to get a socket on the one on the right, I had to put on 2 extensions, which wasn't too bad, but it was very annoying. So I now have acquired a slave. He is tightening down the coil pack on that side. That's the last one. Now all the plugs are out here. Now I'm just gonna drop the rest 8 of them in, and then put all the coil packs back on, and then it'll be completely done. Well, we still gotta put the air box back in. So everything's done, put back together. Now we're just going to bring it back to him. was a pretty easy job compared to doing it to my truck, and I'll put a picture of my engine bay on. But like half my motor is pretty much inside the firewall, and it is a really dumb design. I hate it. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but yeah, everything is done, and now we're just going to bring it back to him, and I'm going home. So thank you for watching this, whoever did. I don't really know. I'm probably not gonna get a lot of views on this first one, but yeah, thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.